All right, folks, we've got a great guest today, Taylor McMaster. In fact, we crossed paths way in the way back when. I've been running, obviously, an agency for probably since the Stone Age, Flintstones, pretty much in this business. But, you came across me when you were Dot and Company, and now you've been acquired by E2M. And tell me, what do you think? What's it been so far being acquired?
Oh,
What's it
that's a
been
good
like?
question. It's been awesome from my perspective. I think, I was ready for the next step, the next stage, and being able to join forces with a team of people that I admire and respect and who are doing amazing things has just been so awesome, so light, very positive. So, yeah, the whole process was great, which we can get into. But now being on the other side of the acquisition,
Right, 100%.
I'm, yeah, it's been great.
And I think at the end of the day, like if we looked at um, the true value of what Brett is, it's like amazing, like what you guys can do together. Like it's like Superman and Superwoman, or Batman and Robin. I want to do it because I think what the big and we know this in this industry, which is our biggest concern, like as agencies and people who run businesses and anybody who's involved in this business is everything sounds good until you have to manage it. Right? 'Cause it's all fun and games until you actually have to do something to manage the process. And the biggest concern with outsourcing your business activities, and of course, a lot of us that business owners want to outsource stuff we don't want to do, is the cluster that happens behind the scenes when there's no account management. And this really, like when I heard that you had been brought into the fold, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like that should have been thought about a long time ago for all these countries. Tell me, what do you think, secret sauce wise? What do you think it is? Because you and sort of like Brent and obviously this goes back to many years ago because I spoke at the events that were part of the world of where you came from. I was part of the kind of communities that were involved, and um, it seems like you've sort of sidestepped what I would consider a lot of scaling, which is something that people would probably admire because that's a position of growth that you now have, which can be easily modulated. So a little bit of secret sauce. How did it happen? Like that was the one concern that I was thinking, like, man, like how in the world did this like all come to fruition?
Mm. Do you mean
Mm.
growing the business or the actual acquisition?
No, I think what I really mean, or they said yes and no. Yes, I mean the acquisition, but really what I mean is how did the genesis happen from, obviously these events that we had with Brett and we were in all his cronies and all his, shenanigans of way back when, we visited all these things in Colorado and we had the $10,000 challenge and all these things that were part of life. What, where was the initial first seed? So people can maybe understand where this germinated from.
Mm. So Brent and I met years ago, similar to you, when well, probably not as long as as you've known Brent, but we met through You Gurus. We podcasted together. I spoke at one of his events. It was kind of just a casual. We both work in the same industry. We'd refer people back and forth. So we built a relationship just kind of over time. Simultaneously, I had a great relationship with E2M, the founder, Manish. Him and I met at an event. He actually sent me a cold LinkedIn message way back, and we just became friends. And we would text each other over the years. Hey, how's it going? I'm thinking of you. Or we'd refer people back and forth. And so after a couple of years of building these genuine relationships, that's kind of when our conversations started about an acquisition. And it wasn't even on the table. It wasn't something that we were talking about for a couple of years until one day we were at Brent's event. Actually, Manish and I were both speaking at his event. And he said to me, I'm looking to grow through acquisition in the next couple of years. And I was like, that's really exciting, Manish. I'm so excited for you. And that we were like, oh, okay, should we have this conversation? And then, he had interviewed a lot of his clients, and a big pain point that they were seeing was the client communication, the project management, that client management side of the relationship working with his clients. And so they identified a really big gap and a big need within their business, which was account management, i.e., what we were doing. So there was this natural, we could see how it would just come together. And that's kind of where the conversation started. And, it wasn't the next day, it was over a year of conversations and having to make sure that we did our diligence on both sides and that the timing was right. But it was something that happened over years, I would say, of like growing this relationship and then just the stars aligning in terms of needs within both of our businesses.
What's interesting is that, as I mentioned from the beginning, this is the biggest pain point in all of it. It's account management. There's no question. Project management, account management, strategic thinking. I spent 45 minutes this morning with my team on strategic thinking, and it is the number one problem, without a doubt. And so I'm glad that there's this discussion's happening, because building an agency to multi-million and then having account managers fail past relationships, going back and saying, what, how could I have thought about this? Or I wasn't even probably doing the hiring for most of it. It was probably my team doing the hiring. And then I look back and go, okay, like, what a relief this would be for someone who's growing to not have to vet, administer, corral. And I mentioned the special sauce here a couple times. What is it? How did you get to this thing where you obviously there's responsibility is one, and I get it, meaning that you have to be responsible for a team, and you what you're doing is being responsible for teams of teams. And I'm just wondering how in the world you keep people who are so valuable in your corral.
Yeah.
That's my big question. Like, because these people are invaluable, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you're growing an agency, sometimes you get caught up in I just need to put a butt in the seat. I just need somebody to do this role and do this role and do this role. And you forget that your clients are the most important part of this equation, and you need to keep them happy and successful, and retention is so important. And you can't just put anybody in the account management seat. And I think that is a huge miss within our industry. And I'm sure what you're saying, Matt, is that has potentially happened to you in the past of, having the wrong person there. And that it can crumble an agency. And kind of coming back to this secret sauce, what I've learned, not only before starting Dot, but through the journey, the last 7 years of strictly doing account management, is that a really excellent account manager it's a hard one. It's a hard one to fill and a hard one to keep. And we have to be so picky with the person we put in an account management seat. And I'm happy to dig into kind of what this looks like for us if you think that would be valuable for your audience.
I think if I'm the agency or I'm the person who's maybe looking for a role to fill to pull this trigger on, working with this type of environment, I think they're looking for the skill set that are being demanded in the market. And so I mentioned it before, how to me, universally, strategic thinking is the biggest paramount opportunity that is available for someone, right, to have this role. Because as business owners become, like myself, get mired in day-to-day, or just don't want to work and have somebody else do it, which is another, interesting part of this, which is that sometimes, and I've went through this phase, is that I just got to a certain point where I was like, I'm done. I'm burnt. I cannot have another conversation. I need someone to take on. I can't do this. Now, that was previous agency where I was running multi-million-dollar company, and I was just overwhelmed with the amount of decision making that I had to do. And because you have 100 voices, obviously talking to you at once.
Mm-hmm.
And if your account team isn't available to, let's just say, suffice enough judgment to give the customer a safety net on like feeling that they're making a good decision on their own, then they get to me and they say, you make the decision for me because I can't trust your team. So that element of trust is really what I wanted to chat about, because this is where this kind of gets to a point of how you get a parachuted in account manager to be able to gain trust not only internally but externally. I'm very fascinated with that because they have to be pretty much skin in the game, ready to out of the gate to be able to not just perform, but be creative, be strategic, and put feet in the ground and put elements into people's businesses, which could be life or death for the business or life or death for the agency, which is even more important.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it comes back to bringing in the right people, parachuting that right person in. And I think, you know, because this is our specialty and this is all we've done for 7-8 years, I figured out what works, but what doesn't work. And I can confidently tell you, Matt, that the things that make an excellent account manager are things that are not on a resume. And a lot of people will come to us and they'll say, you know, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I need somebody with SEO experience in this industry that I work in. And I need somebody, you know, on paper who has this much experience in XYZ. That's great. But some mistakes that we've made along the way are that we've hired somebody for experience first. So when we've done that, we've hired somebody, you know, with this exact experience and the personality is second. You know, we're making sure that they check all the boxes. That is when we have failed. And I think the reason is that we have realized the most important traits of an excellent account manager are things that we can't teach. They are things that people are just inherently coming to the table with. It's personality, it's emotional intelligence, it's grit. It's, you know, how willing are they to put their, you know, dive into problems head first and figure stuff out. And hiring somebody who has these soft skills, I'll call them, that is number one for us. Then of course they have to have the skills and the experience in marketing. They have to be a marketer. They have to have great, you know, digital marketing experience, and all those things are a must, but that personality is first. And so something that we've gotten really, really good at, and our team, our leadership team is really strong at identifying what are these things that we're looking for. And so when we see somebody who checks all these boxes from personality to emotional intelligence plus experience, that is when we feel, okay, this person is ready for the type of clients that we work with. You know, I've seen agencies bring in somebody who's more junior and just maybe right out of college, university, and their plan is to train them up, right?
Yeah,
and I love the idea of that. And, you know, I was once that type of person, but I've also realized that the agencies we work with, that is just not going to cut it, because they need somebody who has years in the industry, who has the reps in. They have made the mistakes. They have seen what works, what doesn't work, and how to solve problems. And if you're bringing somebody in junior and trying to teach them all of these things, it's just going to take you years because they have to get those reps, and it's going to cost you a lot of time and energy yourself. You're going to lose clients. You're going to have a lot of these problems aren't going to go away at the speed that you want. So in order for us coming back to how we can parachute someone in, they have to be ready. They have to be kind of up to our standards, which is not just, you know, a checklist of things and a resume. It's a whole person. It's a whole personality thing.
Where is it failed? Where have you found failures when you put people in? What happened when it broke?
Yeah.
What did you do? Was there a single thread or because obviously not everything works, and we've had so many failures with account managers, and it's gone from A to Z. Like some of them are rude, They're just mean. Some of them are inept. And some of them are just dolts, right? But what we kind of found was that the common thread was that they didn't care.
Interesting.
I think that is a really interesting thing because what I'm finding, and again, I want to preface this by having the 45-minute discussion I had with my team this morning about this exact topic, which is there's a partnership arrangement with the customer. For me, there's a line in the sand, and that's where the businesses are made or broken. Because the businesses that come to see you, they know, they're like, you're not like anybody else. You actually like care. Like you literally like go out of your way to think ahead of me and tell me what to do. And I think I'm wondering if you see that same thread.
As you were saying that, from what I can remember, I don't think I've ever heard feedback from one of our agencies that one of our account managers didn't care. And I think that's a really good thing. But I would say where it fails is oftentimes the agency owner isn't ready for an account manager. I see that a lot.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because as you know, Matt, you've hired account managers, you've delegated. This is a big thing to get off of an agency owner's plate. It's often the last. And you have to be ready because oftentimes the agency owner holds a lot of the relationship and a lot of the, past and experience with this customer. So for an account manager to actually step in and do their job the way they want to, the agency owner has to be ready for that. So we see oftentimes the disconnect there where they think they're ready for an account manager. They bring them in, but they don't allow them to actually do their job. So that can be something that fails. In terms of the actual account manager's performance, the things that we see fail, sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but it could be a personality match. And that's just something that just can happen sometimes, where maybe the whole identity of the agency is one specific type of person and a vibe, and our vibe just doesn't match that. And sometimes that can happen, and that's no fault of anyone. We might just bring somebody else in who has a different style of communication or personality, but that's definitely something that we've seen. But yeah, I would say it's not so much care from the account manager. It's more readiness and maybe internal structure of the actual agency we're working in. Sometimes they're not set up to bring in an account manager. Maybe their media buyers do all the client communication and that's how they actually want it to go. So when they bring in somebody to manage the relationship, manage the projects, there's just kind of that's not how they want it to run. And so it just kind of, it can fail there. But yeah, those are some of the things that I see.
Okay. Yeah, I think what I meant they didn't care is that they didn't take the time to really delve into getting the agreement with the customer built out in their mind, the customer's mind, that there was a transfer of responsibility that they were willing to take on and that the cadences were not matched to what the expectations of the customer were. Maybe it's a little strong to say not care, but I would say that they weren't able to match the occupational hazard of being in the account management job, which is you're on call.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you need to pick up the phone and respond back, not text, not anything else related to like sending emails or no, you need to follow up immediately because that's when the trust is made. Mm-hmm. Like that's when you care. When that call comes in, yes, it's 7:00 on a Friday night. Too bad. Pick up the phone, answer. There's no working hours. There is a business that needs to be run, and this person is running a business, and they're relied upon us and you to solve the problem, no matter when, what, and how. Now, I understand there's some ramifications around, putting in limited levels of guardrails. Nothing said about craziness, but I've noticed the survivors in our business were the ones who really have a care factor for the business. And those are rare occasions, but those are the things that sort of examples of what
Yeah.
I meant.
I think coming back to that, a big thing that we talk a lot about is full ownership. The only way for this role to be successful is if you take full ownership over the client experience. And that is, just like you said, it's doing whatever it takes. It's going above and beyond, and it's fully owning that.
How do you interview these people? And I don't mean it from my perspective, but so if I'm going to be someone who's going to be putting my hand up saying, hey, I want to get an account manager. I'm done. You guys give me 10 people, whatever. I'll put the best one. Is that how it is? Or do you sort of beyond like the initial stages, do you go interview them and say, you know what, I've got this particular agency and I want to interview like the top 10 horses in the bin or in the corral, and then you interview them, then you send them to me. How did the whole process work?
Yeah, good question. So how we set it up right from the beginning is we hire everyone at Dot full-time. So we are going out and we are hiring account managers who fit the Dot methods, the Dot vibes, check all of our boxes. We want to hire them ourselves because we know we could put them in front of any one of our ideal agency clients. Mm-hmm. So by the time you come to us and you're like, I need an account manager yesterday, we meet with you, we identify what that role looks like within your agency. We kind of build that profile, and then we are going to suggest somebody from our team. Generally, that's based on a lot of different factors, from personality to capacity, time zone, experience. We basically look at our whole team and we say, okay, we think Sarah is going to be the best account manager for your agency. Here's why. And that person is going to come and be installed within your agency. 99% of the time, it works great. If it doesn't, we kind of go back to the drawing board. But agencies lean on us because we do have this extensive experience, and we can confidently recommend somebody from our team.
So you put them in. It's not an interview process from the business owner. It's just like, okay, here's the one we've picked for you, and go.
Exactly. Okay. Now, sometimes agencies will want to meet with a couple people, and we welcome that. But generally, agencies trust us to make that recommendation for them.
Right. And ideally, that's the way it should be, because then, you're not putting more revs into it. You're just saying, shut up. Here's the person. Go to work. Go back to work.
Yeah, go back to work.
Exactly. Well, that's what I would want. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want it to work. Exactly. Like any business owner, I don't give a crap about how, what, just make it happen. Like, I have too many things on my plate.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about what's interesting here. So now that the connection with HM is set up, now we have a full functioning back-end system, which is really cool, which is why when Brett called me, I'm like, oh, dude, like totally cool. Great concept. And I'm into it. Now there's an interface potentially, right, to look at, like, for example, let me just try and put something here. I have a very difficult website I have to now build. And my team, I don't know, like it's beyond their capability. I'm going to have to hire probably an expert. But the same thing, now that expert should also be able to handle the interface with the customer. So now we've got again, I'm using a website as an example, but we could use anything. But so now, ideally, what would be the ultimate solution is the connection to E2M through your account management team to manage processes and project management and account management all at the same time, to say, hey, guess what you're going to be doing? Managing project, dealing with a customer, and dealing with a vendor, right? And that whole thing is sort of like, wow, that's the secret sauce to me. And I was going to say this from the very beginning, because I thought that's what you were going to say, is that full cycle management is kind of coming into production when you start to work with you, if they need it. They may not need it, right? I'm assuming that there's different swim lanes depending on what the person needs to have done in their business. But maybe give us a little color on that, and then we'll wrap it up after that. Because I think this is sort of like, the crux of this whole matter.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say, our vision with E2M and Dot is we want to be the go-to solution for agencies, whether they need account management or they need back-end fulfillment or they need, both. That's kind of, we want to be able to serve them at whatever stage they're at. An ideal situation, the secret sauce would be, an agency brings us in as account managers, then we can work with the E2M team for the fulfillment. So whether it's that website like you're talking about, they need that done. We would love for our team to be interfacing with the client, and then we are communicating with the E2M team so that everything is streamlined and we remove the agency owner from the whole process. They're no longer the bottleneck. And we can make sure that quality control, we can make sure that things are, running on time and that clients are happy. And so having both of us kind of involved within an agency is that ideal situation. And that's where we see kind of 1+1 = 3 happening, because we can kind of help the client, help the agency, and then they're able to scale so much faster because we're in there, we're taking care of everything.
Hmm. Yeah. So, okay. So the $99 million question is what am I looking at from cost perspective? What should people expect to pay for services? And obviously, I think the variable is going to be, again, you could tell me, but I would think the variable is going to be like the scope of hours. I mean, I'm assuming there's some sort of like ABC level that you have built out based off of like the needs of the agency.
Yeah. Yeah. We work with agencies of all different sizes. Some are, we work with one client within the agency, some we work with 50 clients plus. It really kind of depends on where they're at. How we look at it is we're the full stop solution. So agencies don't need to go out and hire recruiters. They don't need to post jobs and interview and train account managers. Most agency owners don't know how to train a really great account manager. And then on top of that, how to manage that account manager. As you know, Matt, it's a lot of work to kind of oversee and continue to develop account managers. So agencies come to us when they're ready to just take the whole process off their plate. So yeah, we have various different prices ranging from 4,500 onwards, kind of depending on where they're at. But kind of what agencies do is they reach out and we can kind of help diagnose what they need, because some agencies don't even know where to start and what that process could look like.
So it's sort of dependent on what type of level of experience that you need to provide within that agency, plus a level of maybe account size.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the size of the agency, the number of clients, number of meetings, internal meetings, the scope of the clients. We kind of look at all pieces of the account management puzzle, and most agency owners they don't know how to identify how many clients can one account manager take on. And that's kind of something that we help agencies through, because it is kind of confusing. But we've worked with so many different agencies of different sizes. We can look at your specific individualized situation and say, hey, this is how much of an account manager you actually need. Let's start there.
Perfect. All right. So we talked about um, how you got here. We talked about the germination of where this came from. We went through a little bit more of the how to keep a good corral of account management team, the traits, what you're looking for, and then we talked about the process of installing, and then we have a little bit about pricing. Is there anything that you'd like to impart upon the people listening to this, or
Yeah.
something you might not have mentioned?
Yeah. I think most agencies, coming back to what I said earlier, most agency owners think of an account manager as just a butt in the seat. And I think we as a whole industry need to shift our thinking and think about account management as this revenue generator, this way to grow and scale. And if you don't have somebody excellent in this role, it's going to take you backwards, and it's not going to allow you to really scale a successful, profitable agency unless you have somebody who can own this experience, actually, turn clients into raving customers, ensure that your clients are sticking around, all of these elements that sometimes we think, oh, it's just an admin seat. It's very much so not an admin seat. It's a strategic, C-suite position in your agency, and you need to look at it like that. It's one of the most important roles in the agency. And I think, if you are serious about growing and scaling your agency, make sure you have the right person in this seat in order to grow and scale. I've seen so many agencies fail when they don't have the right structure for account management. And, it makes me sad. I want to see the people that we work with succeed and all the people in our industry succeed. And there's a direct correlation between having this system set up properly.
Great. Last question, and we'll wrap it. What happens when the agency says, I want to buy this person from you?
Good question. It's something that comes up. Generally not something we would recommend from Dot and Company. We work with multiple agencies at the same time. We're fractional.
Right.
But oftentimes, agencies will work with us and we'll help them bring somebody in full time and train them and get them up to speed. It's a case by case basis. But I mean, it comes up. We have those conversations semi often. But we look at every client we work with individually, and, sometimes that's what they need. Sometimes they need somebody full time and we can help them there. Sometimes they really just need a couple fractional account managers and we can continue to grow with them that way. But yeah, I would say sometimes it happens and it's a case by case basis.
Okay. I was just curious because that would be my first initiation, which is that they're that good and they're that important. And you could say, look, we don't need anybody else. We want to just keep this person forever or something like that, and, from my indication, this is where that person might be ascending to more of a C-suite role eventually, which is where that was probably going to lead to it. And again, I think these are the discussions that you could help foster with people who are interested. So if you're interested in getting an account manager for your agency, or you're interested in conversation with Taylor, she is a rock star in this space. Again, I've known you for many years. I've seen posts from you, although you're a little bit more verbose now that you're in your podcast studio. I actually, I know your name. I know you obviously because I know the lineage here, and Dot and Company was, I think, some of the when we were growing back in the day, many years ago, it was one of the conversations that we had with your team, and that might have been maybe premature for our growth sector, but for anybody who's into scaling, for sure, here's your answer. Amazing. But so we'll catch up to you another point in time, Taylor. I'd love to circle back with you after you've been ingested completely by ETUM, and in a year from now, maybe we can have a conversation about what it's like to now scale your scaling, because you're probably going to go through a great big growth phase with now the amount of agencies you're going to be able to support with that relationship.
Absolutely. Can't wait to catch up and see where we're at in a year and re-listen to this conversation and update you all on where we're at. Thank you so much, Matt, for having me on. This was a great conversation.
My pleasure.